Right, you want the good news or the bad news? The good news is we're going to get the finest guest here on Talksport. And I spoke to a financial expert and wealth manager about the situation of our personal finances. The bad news is, frankly, what you have to say. Jonathan Davies joins me now as an economist and wealth manager with Jonathan Davies Wealth Management. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Matt.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Great pleasure.
Now, this startling information, Jonathan, I'll let you tell me about how little the average Briton has saved.
Yeah. Well, it depends what we're talking about. If we're talking about just general cash savings for a rainy day,
yeah,
it's like a week or two's spending. That's as much as the average person in Britain has got.
So how much is that in sort of, what would that involve? I mean, you could do a lot on a rainy day, you could do very little, I mean...
Well, it's like a couple of £1,000.
Oh, right. Is that bad? I got such an appalling attitude.
If you lose your job, and I would suggest to you that a million more people are going to lose their job over the next few years,
yep,
because of what's happening in the economy.
Yep.
If when you think about it, if average earnings are after tax about say £1,500, £1,800 a month,
yep,
basically they've got around about a couple of weeks to a few weeks of cash. It is quite ridiculously low. People have just not been planning properly for rainy days.
Why not?
Well, largely, I think people will say it's because of circumstances, such as they haven't been putting money into pensions because they've lost faith with pensions,
yep,
and I can perfectly understand why that would be. Absolutely. Because the fund management industry has treated people very, very badly.
Okay, so this doesn't include pensions then, or does include pensions?
Well, it doesn't include pensions, but it's an example of why people haven't been saving.
Okay.
And also, I think more practically perhaps, the cost of accommodation in the United Kingdom has been so ridiculously high, whether renting or servicing a mortgage, right, that people have simply massively overextended themselves, particularly if they've taken out a mortgage, because they've been, the phrase, you have to get into property, which is, as far as I'm concerned as an economist, is total arrant nonsense.
I'm so glad you said that. I've always rented my whole life.
Oh, that's interesting. Even the 15 years of the boom up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit younger. I'm not massively old, but I have no desire yet to buy. I feel no pressure from society. I feel no shove towards. I better judge myself on whether I own a house or not.
Well, that's great, Matt. You clearly have got your head screwed on in the right way.
Well, maybe in that respect, I'm sure there are plenty of other ways I haven't.
We won't go into that at this time of the morning. As you know, there has been a mania in property. It's died down now, but still, as you quite rightly allude, it's almost stigmatic that if you haven't got massive debt, and in theory you're buying a property.
Yeah.
Well, it's financial planning. It's been stupid for about the last 5 years.
Yes.
And I've been trying to get that message across in public and in private, but it's so difficult. People just don't understand because they've forgotten that what goes up can go down.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what's happening with property right now.
And not only that, but it for a lot of people on sort of low and middle incomes, it stops their life dead. I mean, I know people that say, I'm not coming out for like a year.
Yep.
So I'm saving up. What is the point? You could rent for, a bit less than that. Not go through all this worry, all this filling out the forms and the anxiety of getting a mortgage and how much you're going to have to budget for and will I lose my job?
It is amazing how the property-related industries whether it's banking or estate agent or mortgage broking or the ancillary industries such as furniture and kitchen sales and all the rest of it. It is amazing how they persuaded people to believe that you could not lose with property, that it was entirely appropriate, that you should rack yourself up with enormous debt because it was going to help you financially. Well, I can tell you, I've been giving investment and financial advice for nearly 25 years now. That tells you how old I am. And in 1987 was the last time I remember people saying to me that their mortgage was a burden on their shoulders. And you know what? I didn't hear that again until last year. And I'm hearing it a lot now again.
I know a lot of people.
And it's inevitable because the amount of debt has been silly. And as you say, it's affected people's lives detrimentally because they've bought into this myth that you cannot lose with property. And my goodness, there's going to, on top of the million people who are going to be made unemployed, which is unfortunate, but, you know, that's economics. On top of that, there's going to be, goodness knows how many tens or hundreds of thousands homes being lost.
Repossessed.
As terrible as it is, that's the way I see what's going to happen.
How do we compare to elsewhere, Jonathan? Are we the only country that's in this,
no, not at all.
much of a problem or not?
Again, it's another myth. You know, it stems from an Englishman's home as his castle. There's another myth that...
well, it's not, it's the banks.
Sorry?
It's not his, it's the banks.
Well, indeed. Well, indeed, you're not wrong. That's another 3-hour program in itself. The myth that the United Kingdom citizens are uniquely determined to own property, when in fact you look around Europe, for example, and Italy, the Netherlands, indeed Ireland, have got a higher percentage owner occupation. No, I mean, the only reason why the United Kingdom got massively into property was because it made money. And that's the same all across the world. But what's particularly interesting is that all across the world, apart from 3 countries in particular, have experienced enormous house price crashes. The 3 countries are Australia, Canada, and the UK, and I can tell you that we're catching up fast.
Oh dear. That's bad news.
Oh yeah. Well, it's bad news, depending on your point of view. It's bad news for those who have racked themselves up with debt. It's great news for renters.
Indeed. I mean, Jonathan, what's the solution to this then? Where does this end? Is there hope?
Well, individuals can't do a great deal about it if they're already up to their eyeballs in debt. The solution is big picture stuff. The banks, you know, we had a little joke about bankers there. I call them banksters. The banks need to be sorted out once and for all. And essentially what that means is that we need to separate the casino banks, as they call them in the City of London, from the normal lending and deposit-taking banks up and down the country. And secondly, we need to make sure that the banks hold bigger reserves on the amount that they're lending. And until we sort out the bankers, and until we stop saying to the bankers, look, when you lose loads and loads of money again, which I can tell you they are going to do, we are not going to bail you out. Until that happens, and unfortunately, this government that we have currently is not giving any different message to the previous government, although they imply that they are. Until we separate the politicians from the bankers, we will not be able to sort the problem out. It'll be there ad infinitum. You talk about is the good news. Well, the good news is, I know this is going to sound really weird. The good news is that we're going to have big public sector cuts. Why is that good news? Because our government might be able to get its finances in order, and that way we might be able to get ourselves back on the road, but it will be after 3 or 4 years of great deal of difficulty in the economy and in society. I'm sorry, I have to say it, that's the way it is.
Jonathan, a pleasure talking to you, even if you have been the bearer of incredibly bad news. We know it's not your fault.
People need to get real. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
This is no party. Very briefly, we've had 10 or 20 years of an orgy of debt and spend. Unfortunately, we now have the biggest hangover in history.
Indeed. Jonathan, a pleasure talking to you.
You're very welcome, Matt. All the best.
Take care.
Cheers, bye.